Okay, quick music disclaimer here. I do not own the rights to this music, which belongs to the rightful owner, who is the intoxicating mind of Dr. Frankenstein. So he made my intro and my outro, and I hope you guys enjoy. Check them out on Spotify and YouTube, and no copyright infringement is intended. Have a good day.
Clear choice of good versus evil, of right versus wrong.
Twisted Tales.
If you like paranormal, true crime, cryptids, or anything else weird, check out the Ouch Was That a Ghost podcast brought to you by your host Liz. You can find Ouch Was That a Ghost on Spotify, Apple, or any other audio platform. New episodes drop every Thursday.
All of the information on this website, podcast, YouTube channel, or Spotify under the name Twisted Tales is published in good faith and for general information purposes only. Twisted Tales does not make any warranties about the completeness, reliability, and accuracy of this information. Any action you take upon the information you find on this website, podcast, Spotify, or YouTube is strictly at your own risk. Twisted Tales will not be liable for any losses, damages, in connection with this podcast.
Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back to Twisted Tales, folks. I know it's been a little bit here. Life's been revolving around more than just podcasting lately, so my apologies on that. But I made time to research this case here. Kind of get my ducks in a row kind of thing. But I'm finally done with this now. It just took some time as I had to talk to friends of Melvin, friends of Brittany's, close family members from both sides, stuff like that, right? All this takes time to go through, to write down, check your facts, and piece it all together, right? Finally, I got it done, so I'm gonna give you guys Melvin Skeete Jr. Part 2. When we last left off, Melvin Jr. and Brittany Green were at the grandfather, Melvin Sr.'s. This was at 31 William Street, located in Whitney Pier. Just a small house on a side street, just off of Hankard and Lawyer Street. Now, when you walk in the front door of the house here, you're in the kitchen area. A wide open area. It has an arch opening. Living room is on the right. The hallway runs up to the bedroom. And this is in the back of the house. The bathroom is on the left. And there's a bedroom on the right, located at the back part of the house. So Melvin Sr. sat in a recliner on the back wall of the living room. This is right in view of the kitchen. Now that's just a little bit of detail on the house for you guys here, so you kind of have an idea of the layout. Now, I'm going to go back to the day before all this happened. So I'm going to go back before December 3rd, 2010. Now, 16-year-old Melvin and 17-year-old Brittany Green had stayed in Glace Bay at her grandmother's house. The grandmother was Teresa Brewster. Brittany would often ask her parents for Melvin to stay over sometimes. Now, December 3rd morning, Melvin and Brittany had started making plans to go into Sydney from Glace Bay from the grandparents' house. So this is roughly a 22-minute drive and about a 20-kilometer distance. Now, Teresa ended up running them into Whitney Pier there because she had to go to work at a local call center in Sydney. She included them on her drive in. Now, that morning, Teresa noticed nothing unusual or out of the ordinary about the young couple. She was one to notice if they were on something that they shouldn't have been. Both teens had struggled with addiction. Teresa knew Melvin drank, that he took medication, and she gave him rides time or two before here, whatever, right? Now, Brittany's eyes, she noticed, were watery a few times when she would pick her up from Melvin's place here at the grandfather's house in the pier. Now, upon hitting Sydney, she then dropped him off at William Street. This is in the Pier Deer. The time frame on this was about 1:05 p.m. because she had to be to work at 1:30 p.m. So she left shortly after dropping them off. Now, the drive-in from Glace Bay, they both already consumed some medication. Brittany ended up taking some pills that she had gotten from her, her Choices program that she was in. We mentioned a little bit on this in part 1 here. So, Brittany's grandmother was the one who primarily raised Brittany, and Brittany lived with her in Glace Bay. Now, Brittany lived with her mother in Toronto here. This was at a young age. But something had happened at that time here which revolved around some molestation. Now, this was during her time up there. I've checked this with, Brittany's cousin here. We did a little chatting about Brittany in a clip here that I'm going to play at the end of this episode. Now, this will just be for you guys, as a way to kind of make up for taking so long to put this case together here. So, Brittany was looked after by her grandmother, so this is the reason why she grew up in Glace Bay. Brittany did smoke a bit of weed and shit like that. She did a lot with her Choices program too. It did help her with some of her addiction, but not all, because she was prescribed medication through the Choices program here. So she did take pills and she did consume alcohol. Most likely, this is due to the trauma and the way of coping with life, right? So Brittany mentioned what had happened in Toronto to Melvin's mother, Shannon, and that's the reason that she had moved back to Glace Bay. Melvin also knew about this, and, he kind of went through a lot of shit in his time too, so they could both depend on each other. Now, they were a happy couple here, this was described by some. They spent much of their time together. Their relationship was very affectionate. Now, they had been dating for at least 4 months by this time here. Now, the friends that they would hang out with, they made mention that they were totally devoted to one another. A normal teenage fucking couple, as it were, right? They had hung out at the grandfather Melvin Sr.'s quite frequent. So, it's not like she was walking into this place the first time or anything, right? They hang out there about anywhere from 4 to 5 times a week. And this is from the months of October to December of 2010. There wasn't any disharmony or anything between them. They would often watch a lot of movies, relax. Sometimes a few buddies of Melvin's would come over or something like that, right? There was always family that would pop in to check on Melvin Sr. too. Melvin Sr. had a bad case of multiple sclerosis, so he had a shit ton of medications prescribed to him for pain. Melvin Jr. would just kind of take his pick from many of the variety of medications that were on hand there. There was liquor available. He would fill up old liquor bottles with local moonshine, shit like that. So he would often get liquor delivered to the house, stuff that he wasn't supposed to do. And this was because Melvin was on conditions, right? He was to stay away from drugs and alcohol. But he loved Melvin to no end, right? He was his favorite of all the kids. When Melvin was young, the grandfather would always take him out for ice cream, trips to the mall, buy him all sorts of stuff, spoiling him more than other grandkids of the family. Even the grandfather made mention here that the couple had argued from time to time. Maybe some had saw a side of the relationship that others didn't. Others did mention it was a little bit of a rocky one. I'm just saying, no relationship is fucking perfect. Nobody is happy 100% of the time. Everything takes work. So there's always going to be in-between shit along the way, right? And there's always going to be different things that you hear, right? Depending on what happens at that time, right? You could be going for a coffee, have a quick little argument, somebody sees it, and that's what they base shit off of, right? When they were both dropped off at the grandfather's, there were a few people already there. Now, this was normal for folks to always be in and out of there. People would stop by to check on Melvin Sr., just to make sure he was okay, if he needed to drop off supplies or anything to him. People would make him food. They'd drop off plates of supper to him. because his multiple sclerosis made it very hard to be mobile, like even on a good fucking day, right? So there were tons of people in the community that loved Melvin Sr. The family name Skeete is a big name in the community of Whitney Pier. Now Melvin Sr.'s parents, Lemuel and Olga, they were very well respected throughout their lives. Lem was a World War II vet, a military mechanic, and he worked on heavy machinery overseas. Now, he was born in Donkin, a village in Cape Breton Island here. It was a rural little place here with a population of a little over 500 residents. Now, he worked hard his entire life, garages, other places like that, and this was after he returned home from the war. This was until he eventually started his own mechanic shop here, sometime later. He also founded a daycare later on here too. This helped out like all the local working mothers like in the community. So he would set up like after school care, do community softball, stuff like that, just to name a few things of how he spent his time and he gave back to his community, right? Now, they also had a hand in creating the Whitney Pier nonprofit housing. So this helped build affordable homes here in the community. Lem lived to be 100 years old, and his wife, they were just great fucking people, man. Olga's hometown was Whitney Pier, and this is considered to be one of the most ethnically diverse communities in the Maritimes. Whitney Pier welcomed thousands of immigrants. They were employed at the fucking steel plant there. This was back home, or they'd work in the coal mines, shit like that, right? Olga, just one of the sweetest people ever. She's very well known for cooking. She must have learned that from her mother, that was from Barbados. Lem and Olga were just salt of the earth people. They never cursed, they never drank. No one ever said a bad word about them. Olga is about 90 years old now. She's now in a wonderful facility that takes great care of her. That's just a little quick history for you guys here on the Skeete family and whatnot. So back to the tale here. So around 2 p.m. that day, he ended up going out for a coffee. He felt good enough to do that. So this was with somebody from the community here, and they ended up taking him up to Member 2. So Member 2, this is a community about 3 kilometers from Sydney's downtown area. It's mostly First Nations community, and there's like a gas bar up that way, casino. It's a cool little place here. This is where they would head out for a few hours. This would leave Melvin and Brittany at the house here for the afternoon. Melvin went into the living room, went into the cabinet, and he pulled out a 40-ouncer of moonshine. So this was filled up in an old bottle that was labeled Golden Wedding Whiskey. He grabbed a shot glass from the kitchen. Another glass here he filled with some water so he could chase it. Now, Brittany and Melvin did 2 shots each of moonshine, and then this was in the main bedroom of the house. So shortly after they ventured out to find the prescription pills, their first stop didn't pan out, so they didn't get anything. Now they thought of another place here, and they started to head that way. Now this time, Lady Luck had pulled through. Melvin ended up scoring a bunch of pills. Ribotril, clonazepam, benzos. There was a couple green ones here, a bunch of Tylenol 3s, a whole big-ass fucking handful. So they got what they wanted. After this, they decided to head back to the house. On the way back from grabbing what they went out for, they met up with a dude here that Melvin knew. This was the son of a friend of his mom's. Melvin was about to rob this dude here, and when they got to talking, it came up that he had no money on him. So he didn't rob him, and the guy went along on his way. Melvin's plan was originally to spray this guy with a can of bear mace that he had often carried with him. Now, it was getting a little late. This was around supper time here, so around 5:50 p.m., just a little under the influence, Brittany phoned up her grandmother. She asked if Melvin could stay over the night out in Glace Bay. Just a question she normally asked, right? Like they were going out for a little bit. And The grandmother replied with, "We'll see. Teresa members are sounding okay on the phone here," and then there was another call made to her grandfather. Now, he was known as Poppy George. This was mainly from the family and whatnot, right? So they talked a moment about Melvin coming for a visit, and then the phone call ended pretty abruptly. He remembers it lasted about 45 seconds. Now, Brittany had been on William Street when she placed both of these phone calls. Melvin Sr. had been back from his coffee and his chat with the person that he went up with earlier. So he got home a little later in the afternoon, about 4:30, 5 p.m. roughly. The grandfather here was in his living room, so he was sitting in his chair. Melvin and Brittany ended up going into the main bedroom, and this is on the other side of the wall from where he was sitting. Now, it was a smaller house here, so all the rooms were located very close to one another. There was some arguing going on in the bedroom, and then he could hear the two getting a little bit loud. So he gave a quick little holler here, keep it down kind of thing, right? And then he heard some banging on the wall. And then it would be a few moments before he would see his grandson Melvin. So all this was around the 6 p.m. mark. Now, the one that had taken him out for a coffee earlier in the day had popped back with some supper that she made for him. Like I previously mentioned here, they would always be popping by in and out. People would check on him, drop him off food and such, right? She had her grandson with her at the time. He would end up running the food up because she had some mobility issues here. So she would wait outside in the van that they drove up in. She watched him walk in with the meal, and then she waited a moment, and all of a sudden Melvin came running out, and he hopped into the van's back seat. And he was saying, "You gotta come see. You gotta come see." And, thinking maybe something was wrong with the grandfather or something, right? She ended up following up there. He was a lot quicker, but, she took her time, got up there. So she followed Melvin Jr. up to the house. By the time she got inside, Melvin had already been, hollering and shit like that. So she went down to the little hallway. This is where the bedroom door was, a little bit slightly open. So obviously she pushed it open. And when she did, she saw the body of Brittany lying motionless on the bedroom floor, completely covered in stab wounds, and there was blood everywhere. Not long after she got out of the house, she drove to a nearby Needs convenience store and called 911. She arrived totally frantic, from what she's seen, right? It's just, you're not used to seeing that shit, and you see something completely tragic, you just see a dead body, and it's from people that you know, right? So not long after she got out of the house, she drove to a nearby Needs store. She spoke to a clerk on shift there that night, and this was at 6:13. So, in a statement made by police, she says that she was at William Street for all of 5 minutes. So, a constable, Terrence Martell, of the regional police have responded to the call. So, he ended up driving on William Street here in Whitney Pier. So, upon turning onto William Street, he encountered Melvin walking around, probably about 100 feet from his grandfather's house. He was totally confused and under the influence. Constable Martell had rolled down his window just to ask Melvin, "What are you up to, bud?" So he got no response. Melvin gave him a blank stare and kept on walking. Since he ignored his request, he started to jog across the street just a little bit. Constable Martell got in pursuit. He caught him about 50 feet down the road here. He placed him under arrest for breach of conditions. When he went to cuff him, Melvin kind of shrugged away from him. He crossed the street back towards the police car, and he was pursued and then handcuffed. Upon returning to the police car to arrest him, Melvin was found unresponsive, but he ended up coming around here when Martell started asking him if he understood his rights. Now, instead, he asked Martell, "Where did you pick me up at?" Where was I at? Pretty much as if he initially forgot the circumstances of his arrest. Not long after, he was booked up at Grand Lake Road Regional Police Department. When booked, he was observed by officers to have slurred speech, to be a little bit unsteady, and he smelled strongly of alcohol. In the lockup video that was recording, Melvin can be seen swaying back and forth in front of the booking counter, and then being propped up by police, because they just tried to hold him up from falling. Now Melvin slumped forward just to rest his head on the counter here. A constable had gripped him up by the shoulder and just straightened him back out. While he was being read his rights, Melvin started vomiting all over the booking desk, and then they got him a garbage can so he could continue to throw up without making a mess. When he was told the news about being charged with murder, he replied, "Me? On murder? Nah. For who?" And the officers told him they're not going to discuss it. And Melvin forcefully said, "No, I want to know, man." While he was at the booking desk, one of the officers heard him ask to speak to his girlfriend, and they didn't respond to that either. And he continued on, asking, "Hey, I need to call my girlfriend." Police had asked him, a couple quick questions here, like his name, his address, little shit like that. Now he gave them the address, he gave him his name, and he also included his middle name. Yeah, so we ended up answering all these little questions here, no problem, right? So after processing him at the counter here, he was taken to an interview room. Due to his unsteadiness, he was guided there by officers because he couldn't walk on his own. Once in there, he told officers that he would like to know what's going on. And shortly, he passed out once he was in there, so this was about 7:30 p.m. now. So a constable, James Taylor of the forensic unit, had came in to take photographs and kind of swab his bloody hands and get some samples. He started to slide down the chair that he had been propped back up yet again. So during the photographing here, he was pretty much unconscious the whole fucking time. The photographer had to move his head around to get angles for the pictures that he needed. After this, some swabbing was done. He answered a couple questions with mumbled responses, and he was taken to his cell, and he went to sleep. This was around 7:37 p.m. Police woke him back up at 4:36 a.m. for more questioning. Melvin got a hold of some counsel. He spoke to them in person. 2 officers were involved for the most of this. This was a Constable Adam Campbell and a Constable Philip Ross. Now, Melvin had now seemed a little bit more coherent at this time here. He was no longer drunk. Again, he asked to call Brittany, and that he couldn't believe he was being charged for murder. He said, "I didn't commit no murder, man." And around 11:39 a.m., police had tried to get a reason for Brittany's killing. Now, Constable Ross had made a quote saying, "Obviously, this girl was cheating on you. We know that." And Melvin replied flat out, "No, she wasn't," and then ignored their efforts to get him to talk. They were doing all of this questioning while they were showing him forensic pictures of Brittany's murder, like the whole crime scene. And yeah, he didn't really say much after that. He just looked at the photos, probably thought about everything in his head, right? Now, the night of the arrest, Melvin was so intoxicated on booze, and I guess you add your unprescribed medication in there, he was to the state of beyond. Example, like the next day when he asked to call Brittany, he was unaware that she was dead. Even more unaware that he was the one that killed her. Now, it's possible here to become more intoxicated under the effects of medication when you're drinking booze, because the meds usually kick in about 30 to 40 minutes later. If you take something that makes you drowsy, you're going to get drowsy, right? And with the effects of alcohol and everything, it's just not going to be good. And these effects will last long after. They might progress over time. These will last hours later, right? because the effects of drugs and alcohol can increase over time as concentrations in the blood become more elevated. So as you get drunker, the medication's going to kick in and you're just going to be fucked, depending on what you take. And Rivotril is what Melvin was taking that night. Now, back at the crime scene, police were questioning folk, the grandfather, the woman that followed Melvin back into the house, and they were gathering evidence throughout the little house. They found blood-soaked socks. This was located in the hallway. This was near the entrance to the living room. A pair of men's jeans with blood on them, turned inside out. This was located in the main bedroom. 2 teeth belonging to Brittany. A 40-ounce bottle labeled Golden Wedding Whiskey. And this contained a clear liquid, indicating that it was something other than the label had stated. Plus, whiskey is actually a brown color, or like an amber color. Well, after distillation, whiskey's actually clear, but it's put into barrels. So then the wood kind of seeps into it, which causes the amber color. And this was an old empty bottle refilled with moonshine. They also found a pair of blue pajama shorts, which were Melvin's. There was a pair of pajama shorts that were Brittany's. And at least 4 knives are implicated in her death. 2 knives were broken off in the left side of her body, and there was also a knife located by her head, and they found one in the kitchen sink. They also found 2 more knives in the hallway. The whole place had blood spatter everywhere, from the bedroom, down the hallway, the living room, all fucking over. Now, statements were taken from Melvin Sr., the other lady, and Melvin, obviously, and all that woman decided to do that night was just deliver some food to a sick man. But instead, she walked into a fucking crime scene, and a horrific one at that. It's possible that these knives were already located in the main bedroom. Melvin was paranoid about people coming after him, so he kept shit like this and pepper spray close by and on hand. The reason that he lived with his grandfather was that he had gotten Melvin out of jail, even against the advice of Shannon, Melvin's mother. Melvin was not to do drugs or drink, as it was part of his conditions while living there. It seemed the grandfather would do anything for young Melvin here. They kind of had like a more of a buddy kind of relationship. As we're on the subject of Shannon here, just a quick thing here. Shannon had actually called Brittany's grandparents here on 2 separate occasions, warning them of Melvin's behavior and that they should keep her away from him. So this here was told to me here by one of the family members here, and yeah, so figured I'd add that in. There was some evidence here that showed Melvin was searching for knives during his stabbing of Brittany. So he was using different knives, like he would stab her and then go look for something else, come back and continue. All this was taken from blood spatter evidence here. There was an overturned kitchen drawer, and there were knives in the hallway. There was blood spatter found in the kitchen drawer near the kitchen sink. Another drawer had been pulled out and dumped onto the floor, but there was no DNA evidence to say how it got here or who threw it here. Pepper spray was seized off the floor of the bedroom. Melvin Sr. was giving his statement here to police because they were questioning him too. So he mentioned that he didn't hear or see anything. Now, with the layout of the house here, like there was no way that he didn't see anything from his point of view. Police had found 2 knife blades that were protruding from her side. One was a 4.5-inch blade, the other was a 4-inch blade. So the knife handles of these blades were broken completely off. These were located on the bedroom floor. Now she had been stabbed with so much force and so much rage that both knives had broke off inside of her. Other samples were gathered up that contained both of their DNA. It was a butcher knife they found here, a blade with fucking 8 inches long, 2 inches wide, and it contained both parties' blood. Poor Brittany died at some point after 5:50 p.m. and before 6:06 p.m. on December 3rd, 2010. And police had detailed that there were about 4 knives in total used on her. Not long after an autopsy was done on Brittany here. This was done by a doctor named Wood. So, yeah, this is gonna get bad, folks, so just a trigger warning, whatever. This whole thing should be a fucking trigger warning. Now, Brittany Green was stabbed a total of 104 times. She died as a result of fatal amount of bleeding from multiple sharp force injuries. Her head and face had signs of blunt force trauma that split the skin and fractured her right orbital bone and her nose. 2 of her front teeth had been knocked out with so much force that their roots were still intact. There was no bruising or signs of sharp force injury on her hands. This meant that she didn't defend herself one bit. She had been knocked unconscious before she was brutally stabbed. A conscious person would have cuts on their hands and their forearms. This would be from defending themselves. She'd been found laying flat on the bedroom floor with her arms beside her head. The blunt force to Brittany's mouth had knocked her completely out, but blunt force did not kill her. She bled out from all the stab wounds and bled to death. Her head was checked out. There was no bleeding or swelling around her brain. She didn't feel anything after the initial knockout, so when she was struck in the head and had fallen onto the floor, that would have been the sound that the grandfather had heard when he spoke up during their argument to keep it down. Now, it's unknown if he had hit her with his fists or the Golden Wedding 40 bottle that they found. There was blood found on the outside of the bottom of the bottle, with a majority of it being hers. A minor bit was Melvin's blood. It was unsure if blood had gotten there from her bleeding body or if he had used it as a weapon on her. Now, they weren't able to describe what was used to knock her out, just that he was capable of doing so. The pictures taken back at the police station of his hands had shown a minor cut on his right knuckle. This was also slightly swollen. The way the blood splatter had been displayed throughout the bedroom, it went as far as the east and south walls, which isn't surprising due to how many times that Brittany was stabbed and the force of it coming in and out, upward, downward, right? After the police had finished up with the scene, Melvin was under arrest. The autopsy was done here. There was like a toxologist analysis here. This was just to check her blood and her urine. So this indicated concentrations of alcohol, codeine, and morphine. Now these levels proved not to be toxic. Brittany's blood alcohol level where a person appears noticeably drunk and may have severe visual impairment. Because when somebody's at these levels, even an experienced drinker would actually have balance problems, especially if pills were involved with that, right? So you're mixing your drugs, you're drinking, you're gonna get drunk from the booze, and the medication's gonna fucking hit you, and it's gonna cause vision problems, especially if you're drinking moonshine. A doctor noted that the alcohol and drugs impaired her, but not enough to cause her death. Now, as the crime scene was analyzed here, the cops got their evidence for the case. The family ended up being the ones to clean up this absolute fucking horror of that night. The cops won't do that shit. They'll come in, like, check for evidence and do all that, get what they need, and then they'll dip, right? So the family, some of the family had to end up cleaning that up, and I just couldn't imagine cleaning up all the blood and seeing all of that fucking terror that would, that would stick with anybody, right? The family, they wore like full body suits or whatever. They had shields in their faces, cleaning up a substantial amount of blood, right? That blood splatter was everywhere. All over the ceiling, the walls. Just a grisly scene altogether, considering the injuries that she had received, too. As I mentioned, one injury had penetrated her orbital tissue to bone at the base of her skull. She had the knife blades lodged in her from being stabbed and broken off inside of her. she was left in the fucking bedroom floor, just lying on her back in only a pair of shorts. Her arms were sprawled out right angle to her body here. The amount of blood present at the scene suggested that when these injuries were inflicted, she was still alive, but she'd just been knocked unconscious. She still had circulation to cause the bleeding and everything, which would have occurred at a very rapid rate anyway, due to her wounds. There was wounds on her jugular vein, her intercostal muscles, a severed aorta, other abdominal organs were stabbed, her lungs were penetrated. She had sharp force injuries to her kidneys, her stomach, various structures of the bowel, her liver, her spleen, and pancreas. All of this was penetrated. They had all these were stab wounds. The autopsy doctor here, Dr. Wood, was unable to determine the order or the sequence of the sharp force injuries. Now, some were less depth, some were deeper. The good doctor could not tell the positioning of the assailant, just that they had been in close proximity. Now, while all this stuff went to court, Melvin's family had went, all except his mother, Shannon. She made sure he had the nicest clothes to wear to court. Made sure he had his dress shoes, everything. So yeah, she looked after him. Now, Melvin Sr. was there because he was testifying. His grandmother, Mabel, went every day to court. When in court, Melvin testified that he had zero recollection of anything that happened on William Street after he and Brittany had returned from getting pilled. There were a total of 6 sheriffs in the courtroom. 2 were by Melvin, 2 on Brittany's family side, and 2 on the main door when he walked in. The sheriff on the outside had a metal detector, so he would scan you over, empty your pockets into a bin. They'd make you, rifle through your personal items and shit like that, your purses and whatnot, so they could go through that. Now, it said here if you had to leave to, go to the bathroom during trial or anything, then you'll be forced to repeat the same security steps that you just went through. When Brittany's family were in court, the family wore t-shirts with her picture on it every day to show support. Now, the lawyers had started in with witnesses here, the evidence, everything that they had. Now, they had evidence that Melvin Jr. drank moonshine and took Rivotril on December 3rd, 2010. Then he became intoxicated, then very agitated, and he made an assumption that Brittany had been talking to other boys, and that she had been cheating on him. Now, in his sudden state, all the excitement, despite what she had told him, he knocked her out cold. And then, without thinking about the consequences of his actions, he began stabbing her. So they looked at the consumption of alcohol and drugs that they both used that day. They had evidence from everything in the house. Now, Melvin had jumped to the conclusion that she had been cheating on him while he was all in a fucked up state. Now, he knew that he took pills after leaving Glace Bay. He was high in the drive-in to Whitney Pier from the grandmother's house. And then they drank 2 shots of moonshine on William Street sometime in the afternoon. And then they took the Rivotril, as he recalls. Melvin said he took a total of 10 of them. Now, this was more than enough to get him high. But since he was a seasoned drug user, he still would be aware enough not to take a toxic dose. Now, the Golden Wedding whiskey bottle here, this was completely full when he had grabbed it from the cabinet here. The remaining contents were a little less than half a bottle. So when he and Brittany opened it, the bottle was full. Unfortunately, there was no way to indicate how much they had to consume. So there were 23 Tylenol 3s that were found by police in the pocket of a pair of jeans here too. This was located on the floor around where Brittany's body had been. There were also Zopiclone and fluoxetine found in her system. Now, this is the same prescription that she was prescribed to from the Choices program that she was in. So this confirms Melvin's claims of her drinking and using medication that day. Blood had been found all over the house. Like I mentioned earlier here, there was blood that dripped onto the floor of the bedroom, the bathroom floor, and the floor of the living room. Now, they found the diluted blood here by the fucking sink area. A foot transfer was found in front of the kitchen counter, pointing towards the kitchen cabinet. They also found a bloody sock print here with a toe impression. This was in the front of the kitchen. And those two blood-saturated socks here that were found in the hallway in the kitchen here, both socks had major DNA components of Brittany Greene's blood. This was consistent with a person wearing the socks that was stepping in Brittany's blood. Now, Melvin had the socks on, so he tracked it into the kitchen. This had also shown that Melvin was going back and forth between the house. So he was going in and out of the bedroom here. So he was going to the kitchen to grab more knives. Now, the footprints were also in the living room here. But at one point, the socks were removed completely, and they were discarded when he left the house, because when he was arrested, he was barefoot. Now, there's a little part here from two doctors. Now, they talked about Melvin during the court here. So there were Dr. Saeed Akhtar and Dr. Stephen Hucker. So Dr. Hucker had talked about the ingestion of Ribotril and its effects on the memory. Now, in all reality, Melvin honestly couldn't remember a thing from that night of her murder. So Dr. Hucker had talked about the half-life of Ribotril, how it can go up to 50 hours. So, I mean, that's a long time for medication to stay in the system. He did make mention that Melvin and his reaction after being charged with the murder. The doctor made mention of his lack of memory being consistent with the ingestion of so many of those pills. He also viewed the video of him swaying back and forth at the booking desk there. So he heard the interview, his slurred words, everything there made him think that his memory loss is genuine. The doctor looked at more court stuff here. This was by Melvin Sr. He wrote down some statements too. So Dr. Hucker had made a report up about Melvin. So it kind of goes like this. While it's clear that Melvin was under the influence of substances at this time, the statements from his grandfather and the woman who called 911 from the store strongly suggest that he was in fact aware at the time of what he was doing. Example of this is washing his hands, getting the blood off his hands, grabbing different knives, removing bloody clothes, that type of shit, right? So a few folk had hopped on the stand. Melvin Sr., for one, he hopped up there. When I rolled through these court documents here, it said that, what was it here? That Melvin Sr. wasn't the most truthful person about telling all his events and everything of that night here. So there were a few things that he denied. He denied, like a lot of things actually, like getting liquor delivered for Melvin and Brittany, how there was easy access to his medication. There was a ton of medication there. It seemed that he had poor memory from the timing and the sequence of the events during December 3rd. He doesn't remember the times of it, but he does remember that certain things did happen. Now, Melvin Sr. always had like a kind of a buddy relationship with his grandson. He allowed Melvin to take his pain pills. He let him drink there. So he didn't say too many facts here or tell the truth. It just seemed he didn't want to implicate himself in allowing his grandson to do all these things, right? So as he was on there, he just kind of tried to play the victim on the stand, right? Like that he had no control over Melvin and his actions and everything like that. Melvin Sr. barely admitted to anything that police asked him while he was on the stand. Shannon, Melvin's mom, she didn't talk to Melvin Sr. for a few years after this because of the way he acted on the stand, right? And he just totally kind of... So what he did is he made himself not look like the bad guy that he allowed Melvin to do these things at his place. He pretty much said it was all Melvin's fault and blamed a lot of things on him, but didn't take the blame for the shit that he let him do. So Bruce, that was Shannon's brother, he didn't talk to him for a few years here, but eventually they ended up talking. Now, Bruce had some history of abusing women over his life, too, and he had a police rap sheet and shit, so he didn't admit to anything that police asked him. So he pretty much blamed everything on Melvin. He didn't take consequences for his own actions or anything like that, because he didn't want to implicate himself in the shit that he let Melvin do, right? He just said that he had no control or whatever, right? Now, Melvin was actually in shit here at one point here, so he was in police custody. Now, he was released from police custody under Melvin Sr.'s care. So Melvin Sr. signed a couple papers. He got Melvin out of jail to come live with them. And he remembers when the lady popped over with the food around supper time, so that's one thing that he did remember about the case here. Now, Melvin hollering for her to go to the bedroom and then running back screaming, "Oh my God, oh my God." Melvin was uttering in the background about her being unfaithful. So he was going on saying, "She went out on me, Poppy, 3 times." And this is what Melvin Sr. recalls here. So Melvin thought that Brittany was cheating on him. So he also heard Melvin mention that he can't leave no witnesses. So this is what happened after everything here. It just seemed that Melvin had a clear motive for murder when he had stated, "She cheated on me. I had to." The courts looked at some other things too here, like how he ran outside, he had no shirt on, no shoes. This was due to taking off the blood-stained clothes. They looked at his unsteady appearance upon his arrest, his booking, his claim of amnesia for the event, and this was just found that he doesn't remember what he did less than 16 minutes after arriving at William Street. Not that it was from being so impaired at the time, but that he developed amnesia, and this was from the effects of the Ribotril that fucking took hold of it. So, at supper time, Melvin, that night, December 3rd, he was under the influence of drugs and alcohol. He became quickly consumed by jealousy, started a ferocious assault on Brittany Green. Although as fucked up as he was still able to focus on such of a demanding task. So he had to get down on the floor, kneel next to her, and then stab her multiple times with multiple knives. All of her blood ended up over his jeans, favorably the right knee, and when he stabbed her, he had intended to kill her. He inflicted 104 sharp force injuries to achieve that directive. The devastating wounds to her body and blood spatter pattern, all of this suggested that this was used with force intended to annihilate. The court went through all the details here within the courtroom, even showing photographs of the murder scene. So anybody sitting in that courtroom would now be a part of that scenario, so they would now have that burned into their fucking brain, right? Because none of that shit will stick with you or nothing, right? That's just gonna cause more trauma than fucking good. They also made mention that the grandfather had seen him moments after stabbing Brittany. Now, it was a small place, so the view from the kitchen, from where he was sitting in his chair, he could see pretty easily, right? He could see the whole kitchen. Now, he told police that he didn't see a thing, and even though there was evidence that Melvin had walked back and forth, grabbing knives, and then going to continue to stab poor Brittany over and over again, the grandfather just played it off. He said that he had no control over Melvin, but knowing that he had no control over Melvin, that he could have easily, called Shannon, whatever, right? There were ways that he could have got Melvin the help that he needed too. I don't know. A lot of crazy shit shook down at this place, resulting in the death of a very wonderful human being. So, winding down with the rest of the court shit here, folks, it was a horrible thing that happened here, yeah, but all of this, Melvin had no recollection. The only thing that he fucking knows from this is the pictures that the police showed him here from the interrogation. They showed him pictures of the murder scene. Crown looked at all the evidence here, took it all in, and Melvin Anthony Skeete was sentenced to life in prison, and he was sentenced as an adult. So for the time he was 16 when this happened, he was held in custody until he was 18, and then he was tried as an adult. So he got 25 years in Canada. Now, he was able to apply for parole after 7 years, with the 2 years that he spent in Waterville. So now he would be out in 5 years, but that was for his time served. But upon being sentenced to a second-degree murder charge, Melvin said, "Fuck these people, man," as he was led out of the courtroom. Fuck the judge, fuck the system, and he was sent to Dorchester Penitentiary up in New Brunswick here. So he said some other shit here, like, you ain't gonna break me and shit like that. So, yeah, he was let out of the courtroom. So, he was transferred to Dorchester Penitentiary up in New Brunswick. So, he was up there for a while, then he was transferred to Shoe up in Quebec. That means Special Handling Unit. This is a federal prison actually called Regional Reception Center. So it's nicknamed Shoe, and it's a supermax prison, a 6-wing radial facility that's surrounded by 3 rows of fencing. Yeah, so when they move around the inmates, they're always handcuffed in the presence of officers. Now, officers are only allowed to carry pepper spray with them to get them out of a jam. Now, there's other officers up top on a catwalk here, so they're armed, they have guns. So it's not your average little home away from home, let's say. Now, it was here in Shoe that he became pretty high up. He became a member of very high status. So he doesn't have to carry out certain shit anymore here. So not long after this, he was transferred to Kent Institution. This was up in British Columbia. So this is a max prison up in Canada. So he spent some time here before he was sent to Drumheller Institution in Drumheller, Alberta. So this is where a few inmates ended up getting stabbed. There were 4 inmates that were stabbed, and they required medical attention after a fight back in July of 2021. So what happened here is there was a fight at the jail in the courtyard here earlier on. So some guys were stabbed a little bit. Skeete wasn't involved in this, and he and 2 other inmates were involved in a separate stabbing incident at a nearby building. He was charged with assault with a weapon. The victim sustained some stab wounds in the attack, and 18 months was added to Melvin's sentence to be served concurrently to his existing life sentence. So he was also requested to give a DNA order. So all in all, there were 10 charged, and 4 were injured during this. And it's a little known fact here that Drumheller Institution had opened up back in 1967. And I think that's all I got for you guys folks here. I think I covered every little detail of this here. I hope so anyway. Like, I know some of this was tough for all involved, and it was hard to hear shit from both sides of this, like different point of views on stuff, on Melvin, Brittany, different things like that, right? This whole thing was pretty fucking wild. And a close family member wanted me just to add this in here at the end here. Now, she wanted me to say something about Shannon here. So, Shannon was young when she had Melvin. Like, she did her best. Neil, Melvin's father, he had left when he was young. So, she did do some things wrong, yeah, but, like, none of us are perfect parents. Remember that before judging. And when he started getting into trouble, and he continued to do so, she did go to every counselor, every therapist. She went anywhere to try and get him help. She kicked in drug house doors looking for him, more than one occasion. And when all the professionals did was just try to pawn him off on, like, medication and shit like that, or fucking send him to Waterville. Like, that was the only options that they were given. Nobody really, like, sat down, tried to figure out some help for this kid. Maybe try to get him some fucking correct mental health help, right? They would just send him to Waterville, hoping that would fix things. She does love her son. She tried everything to get him some help. And her own father went against her wishes, and then, as we mentioned in the second part already, he got him out of jail when she had asked him not to. And nobody ever thought that this tragedy would happen. So don't lay blame with his mother, as there are others that weren't exactly role models for Melvin or Brittany in this whole thing. And I myself think that the system totally fucked this fucking whole thing up here, like, from the very start. Like, more things probably could have been done. Specialists could have been called in and what have you, right? Maybe they could have done something more to, make some more appointments, check in with the kid, right? Shit like that, but you never know. I just feel like they didn't try hard enough to help him out the best that they could to their abilities or whatever. I mean, there were a lot of choices made by many people in this whole thing, too. I mean, honestly, yeah, I think that's everything I got covered here. Oh, no, I actually forgot the name of Lemuel's mechanic shop that he opened up there. That was called Lem's Alignment and Brake Shop in Whitney Pier. And unfortunately, Melvin Sr. here, he unfortunately passed in 2014. This was December 15th. And there was some victim impact statements here that were read, during the trial and stuff here. I kind of wrote down something about that. This was from a best friend of Brittany's here since grade 5. She described Brittany as an outgoing girl that only wanted the best for everyone. She could tell Brittany anything. Brittany was loving, caring, and a good person who always had my back. And that's what she had to say about Brittany. Now, a paternal aunt of Brittany here described Brittany's birth as one of the best days of her life. Brittany's grandmother, who raised her to be the sweet, smart person that she was, is now totally broken after being told of the brutality of Brittany's death, which she now suffers from like insomnia, flashback, and nightmares because of all this shit. And it sucks. I mean, I'm sorry that you have to go through all that and you had to see all those details. And one thing here. Upon sentencing Melvin to life, the judge said, "Melvin, I know you face a long, hard journey. I hope you will not give up on yourself, that you will commit yourself to further achievements and remain dedicated to your goals, no matter what challenges confront you." And Melvin Skeete's poor impulse control is no defense to murder. I am satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt that he intended to kill Brittany Green. The judge just said that there before he sentenced him. So when he sentenced him, he said, "He is therefore guilty of second-degree murder, and I convict him accordingly." So everybody looked at the evidence, all the statements, everything about this. So yeah, I'm just hoping I got everything fucking covered here. I worked on this since Monday. Sunday, maybe. Last Sunday was the last time I went on with this, and then continued on throughout the week. And for all those involved, for everything here with that, it sucks. I just want to say it's not easy to lose a loved one, and for everything that you guys have went through, everybody's very strong. You've all went through so much, so I want to thank the family for letting me cover this case here. Sorry for going into as much detail as I did, but it's all tied together into this story. So with that, I want to thank you guys for tuning back into Twisted Tales. I'll be back with some other cases here soon enough. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. And just one last thing here I wanted to mention before I fucking edit out some shit here. One thing that I forgot to mention during this tale here, that since Melvin had been a minor at the time of this, you gotta think that he was, 16 and a half, 16 years old around this time, when he committed the murder. So, the brain functions different there, because it's not fully matured yet. Full maturity comes at around age 25. The development for the prefrontal cortex of the frontal lobe allows us to process, the pros and cons of a decision before it's made. So when you're younger, you're just going to make rasher decisions, and you won't think of your consequences right away than you would if your frontal lobe was fully matured. Now back to Melvin's state of being under the influence when he was arrested here. So, should he have been brought to the hospital and checked on? Because, the lack of being able to walk, hold his head up, the vomiting, even when he was getting the camera, pictures taken and everything there, he was totally, non-responsive for most of it. The photographer had to hold him up and everything. The vomiting that he did there into the trash can, they did all this, and then they put him into a cell. So he could have easily died in a holding cell due to, throwing up, vomiting, whatever. Because if he was laying on his back, he would have swallowed his own vomit, choked, and then died. Now, this happens in which the inhalation of vomit enters your lungs, directly blocks off the flow of oxygen, and then you die. Now, alcohol in particular also has a tendency to produce large amounts of liquid vomit. So when you're intoxicated, like you lose all your function, like your mental, your emotion, other functions here, natural reflexes. So, I mean, you're going to vomit more easily when you're drunk. So, another thing I wanted to add here a little bit, I didn't really do much about Brittany here, and I kind of trailed off towards Melvin for most of this, but I got a little bit here. She was born October 11th, 1993, and she was born in St. Rita's Hospital in Sydney, Nova Scotia. Now, this was a hospital open from 1955 to 1995, established in 1924, actually, re-established in 1955. Now, after all of this, her funeral and everything, her visitation was held at Curry's Funeral Home at 775 Main Street in Glace Bay. Now, in an obituary that I found here, it had a nice little story, a nice little write-up, I should say. So that said, Brittany, though we never had a chance to say goodbye, I look for you in rainbows way up in the sky. You are my diamond glimpse on snow, for I visit you each day. So many times I've felt your pain, I've watched you cry, and I've heard you call my name. I am holding you, but a silent voice calls out to you. Your time had come, and I had to let you go. A couple other things before we lastly wrap this up. Now, there was a thing here that they did for Brittany, too. There was a silent witness silhouette made in her honor. So, the silent witness thing was just like a program to, like, show memory of those that have died as a result of domestic violence. This was done by the Cape Breton Interagency on Family Violence. Now, this was like a place that would help represent somebody killed as a result of domestic violence. The part is to not remember the tragedy, but to focus on happy memories and what the person meant to people. Now, this specific one made for her had represented Brittany as friendly, athletic, and loving. The project helps increase the impact of domestic violence and availability of services to those that have encountered it. Now, when the transition house reopened back in 1981, the staff that worked there had learned from listening to all the women there what they had to say, like about all their stories and everything, all their experiences. And in turn, they helped support those women. And now the whole thing consists of like 25 plus agencies and other such organizations that help people that are involved in like domestic violence or family violence, anything like that. And this was from a 2019 article that I found. And also, since Skeete was 16 at the time, there was a publication ban that was set in place here. This was removed by the judges so the public could hear the case and hear Brittany's identity. This was approved by her family as well. So this was due to like the obvious overkill and viciousness of the attack. So the judge decided to try him as an adult. Upon sentencing by the judge, Melvin disrupted the court by yelling at the victim's family, saying, "You guys ain't gonna break me. I'll still be smiling." And then as he was led out of the courtroom, he started to scream, "Fuck these people, fuck the judge, fuck the police, and fuck the system." The judge ruled a youth sentence would not have held him accountable and is considered a high risk to reoffend. And lastly here, Skeete automatically received credit for his time served since his arrest in 2010. And lastly, he was ordered to provide a sample from DNA database. What else did I forget here? Oh, when the 911 call was placed from Needs, this was confirmed by the store clerk, Linda Sivret. And this was all found from paragraph 39 of court document 225794. Very last thing here, I swear to God, because I'm not dealing with this case again. Now, since we talked about everything in here, like family abuse, molestation, other violence, so all this family stuff here, when somebody uses abusive behavior to control or harm a family member. So if you or anyone you know is going through this, there's online resources available. I'm actually going to post these links in the episode here. There's sheltersafe.ca. Sheltersafe.ca will give you all the lists of your like women's shelters and everything throughout Canada. So this will give you the location of each one. There's the kids' health phone. This is available 24/7. Now, there's also crisis services available by call or text here. So you can text 211 or call 1-855-466-4994. And also, the provincial domestic hotline is 1-855-225-0220. And there's lots of help out there, folks, so don't hesitate to call if you're in harm or worse, right? And you can also call 911. So nobody should have to go through any violence from anybody that they love, though. That's it. Thanks for tuning into this extremely twisted tale. Thanks for tuning in. Have a wonderful day, folks. So, I've been speaking with Brittany's cousin, Aaron, and we're just gonna do a little bit of chatting about Brittany here and how she was and everything. And so yeah, we'll do that. Hi, Aaron. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good,
So
good.
yeah, no, I want to thank you for like helping me out with this case and everything too, a little bit here and there, right? So that's really appreciated. So thank you.
Absolutely. I have no problem doing it. I'm excited to do it. I think it should be talked about.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's something that happened, right? So, I mean, it's just a story that happened. People talk about it, and that's it, right? So,
Yep.
like, how close were you with, like, hanging out with her and stuff?
We were extremely close. We were born like 9 months apart, so we like really grew up together. Basically like sisters more than cousins.
Oh, cool. So you guys are pretty
We
tight.
went to we went to camp together. Like we did everything. We started going to camp together probably when we were like 9, 8 or 9, 10 maybe.
Okay. So that was, like, just some random, like, kid stuff or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, we did everything together. Every summer we spent together. Yeah.
What were you guys like in school? Like,
Yeah, we didn't go to the same schools at all. She grew up in Glace Bay. I grew up in Sydney. So,
oh, okay. That makes
but
sense.
yeah.
So you guys, like, hung out more, like, after school and stuff like
Yeah.
that in the pier and whatnot?
Yeah.
That's cool. What do you think of Melvin? Like, did you ever meet Melvin?
Oh yeah, yeah. I grew up with Melvin too. He's actually would be related to me on like my mom's side of the family. My uncle's married to his mom, so he's like kind of my cousin. So yeah, I grew up with him too.
Okay. How was he growing up?
Um, I as far as I can remember, not great. Um,
How
when we
so?
were really young, he was just evil. He just was not a nice person. I stopped hanging out with him once I realized, like once I got older and was like, yeah, no.
And that's it, eh?
Yeah.
What kind of stuff? Like, what do you do that would make you not want to hang around with him?
Well, we all grew up in like regional housing, like chicken coops in the pier there.
Yeah, yeah, I know about
So
that.
like yeah, so like we all lived super close. So growing up there's like a group of kids that always hung out together, and me and Melvin were a part of that group. And I just remember him like abusing animals and cursing at very young age, and our parents always trying to keep us away from him. He was one of those kids.
Not really one to hang around with all the time or whatever.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like I said, once I started getting older, my dad was really like on me about not hanging out with him. And yeah, once I got older and realized why, I stopped.
Yeah, what did you think of like him and Brittany dating or whatever? Because like she went to Glace Bay. They must have just like met in the pier, I would assume.
Yeah, Brittany hung out a lot in the pier. She did, like, other than me, she did have a lot of other friends in the pier as well. So even when she wasn't hanging out with me, she would be in the pier hanging out with other people.
Okay.
And Melvin, that was kind of his home place. So yeah, I'm assuming they met through friends.
And then just started dating eventually.
Yeah.
Like, did you notice like when they were dating? Like everybody here, like I've read people message me different things here, like saying that the relationship was like just two teenagers in love kind of thing, right? But there were others that say like they were always arguing stuff like that.
Yeah, I think Brittany tried to only tell me the good stuff because I would tell her growing up, this is the type of person Melvin was. Like, I know him, Brittany. And so she, I think, would try and be like, no, 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 he's different. And so I didn't hear much of the bad stuff. She never told me much of the bad stuff.
But you did like notice like it was a little different or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was some stuff here I was gonna ask about. I know like she went to Glace Bay High and everything. You said she was really like big into basketball.
Yeah, she was a great basketball player. I don't remember when she started playing, but I think she was fairly young. And yeah, she kept through going with it through school, and she was a great basketball player. She'd go to basketball camps at like the college, and she loved it. She really did love it.
Something to keep her occupied or whatever too.
Yeah, it did.
Mm.
It helped her a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, obviously she was probably working through some stuff,
Oh,
life and
absolutely. Yeah.
school and everything, right?
Yeah.
There was I was gonna talk here about well, some people messaged me like some molestation and stuff that happened when she was like wicked young. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify if that was true or not, because some say that all of that happened at a young age and then it came out like well later on because she started using pills and stuff like that to kind of maybe cope. I'm not sure, but what do you know about that? Like, did she mention any of that shit to you or?
What I know about it is, yeah, she was living in Toronto when she was really young with her mom. And that's where she was unfortunately sexually abused as I don't even know how old she was, but I know it was definitely 5 or under. It was very young. And so she came to live in Cape Breton with her grandmother after that happened. But yeah, growing up, she did deal with a lot of trauma. And yeah, she did get into, some unhealthy ways of coping with that.
Mm, yeah, I would imagine. Yeah, I didn't want to dive too much into that, but like all the pill use and everything, even with Melvin too, like they had free access pretty much to like medication. They were in the peer, right? Depending on who you talk to or whatever.
Yeah, I think it was pretty easy for them to get most of the medications they were taking.
Yeah, because there was some there, like there was a I forget now. It was a program that Brittany was in. It's called Choices or something there. So I mean, she went through that, and then she had some medication through them, I believe, like Soplacone and shit.
Yeah, she went through a lot of programs. She was in Big Brothers Big Sisters at one point. Like, they did try and help her a lot. Unfortunately, the trauma was a lot. So yeah, she did get into drugs and drinking.
Just a little too much.
Yeah.
Everybody tells me she was an awesome person. Like, and
And
I
she
believe them.
was, you know what? She was. Even when she was doing drugs and drinking, she wasn't mean. She wasn't angry. She didn't treat anybody badly because of what she went through. She was really a kind person.
Just didn't give anybody a bad attitude or anything.
No, like never. Me and her hardly ever got into arguments, and when we did, it was like because one of us thought we knew better, but like as, sisters, that's what would happen.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, we were like best of friends. I could talk to her about anything.
yeah, I wouldn't have to worry. You know?
Yeah, no, she was an amazing person, even though she had her own struggles.
Yeah, I know. Everybody struggles and does things differently too, right? I mean, obviously, like Melvin helped her in some sort of way, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean, when she spoke to me about him, it was nothing but good things.
mm, yeah, and then everything shook down how it did. Yeah,
Yeah.
they were both there for each other too, right? I mean, it must have had some good for both of them for this
Oh,
relationship.
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, they both went through a whole bunch of trauma as young kids, so I'm sure they could relate to each other and could talk and
Yeah,
feel understood maybe.
well, yeah, and that way they could just kind of communicate with each other about everything, right? Like open up kind of thing.
Yeah.
Confide in each other, I should say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else? Well, I guess mm, it sucks that everything shook down how it did with like Brittany's murder and everything. Honestly, it's fucking terrible.
Yeah.
How did you hear the news of that when that all happened?
Actually, my friend who lived in the pier at the time had called me and had said like something was going on at Melvin's grandfather's house involving Brittany. And I was like, okay. And she couldn't really tell me what was happening. But then by the end of the conversation, she told me, like, I think Brittany's dead. And like, I didn't believe her. So I was like, okay. And we just got off the phone. But then I started getting more phone calls. And I called my grandmother and I told her. And so, yeah, I was the one who, like, and then Brittany's grandmother called me and wanted to know what was going on. And like, I didn't have much information, but I told them as much as I could.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, that's how I found out. And then we all, everybody went to the pier to see what was going on. And
Fuck. Yeah, it's fucking horrible. I'm so sorry.
yeah, wasn't a great time. It was, right close to Christmas. It was, yeah, I think it was one of the hardest times our family went through.
Yeah. I'm really sorry about that. Everything I've read, Brittany was just like top notch,
Yeah, it's really, like I said, it's, you see people who go through stuff and are on drugs and, they're just not, they're not considerate and they don't think of other people's feelings. And Brittany she was always worried about everybody else.
She was just a considerate person.
Yeah.
She took everybody's feelings into consideration, right?
Yeah. Yeah. She was great. I mean, when I got pregnant, she was there for me and she loved my son. They didn't really get to spend much time together, but for his first Christmas, she made sure that he had presents and she was always thinking of other people.
That's awesome. Nah, she sounds totally like just a really good person.
She was great.
Anything you wanted to, what did you want to add? What did you want to throw in here?
I thought you were just going to ask me questions.
Oh, I am. We're done with the questions now.
Oh, gosh. Like, even about Melvin, like...
Well, everybody, like, kind of knew that Melvin was just Melvin, right? And his mother, Shannon. What do you know about Shannon?
I mean, I was young when her and my uncle got together. As far as I can remember, she wasn't the greatest mother. She definitely, I mean, Melvin was out of control, but unfortunately she didn't probably handle it in the best of ways either.
You want to call it a wrap?
Okie doke.
I really appreciate you popping on and, helping me out with this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Twisted Tales.